On the 25th of July 2019, the Song of the Elves quest was released. With it came a brilliant new Crystal City and a variety of new changes to Turaman and the Underground Pass. Many of these major changes were listed within the update blogs, and the changes were included for the purpose of the new quest. But there were many other changes made within these areas that were unlisted, and some even failed polls and happened to be included anyway. I've done my research and there have been multiple changes since this update, some major and some minor, but these are the changes that Jagex didn't want you to know about. Now, if you're like me and dislike unwanted changes, then why risk your passwords and important information? Dashlane is the sponsor of today's episode, and they're a company that specializes in keeping you and your data safe so that no one else can change something without your permission. Many of us have multiple logins for a variety of different programs and websites, and sometimes it can be hard to keep track of them all. Dashlane is an excellent program that safely stores all of your information from passwords to addresses and even your financial details. It is available across all of your devices and offers an incredible amount of convenience by autofilling your logins and info, so not only is your data secure, but it makes checking out and logging in a breeze. Dashlane constantly monitors all of the different databases your information is stored on and can notify you of any potential breaches and can assist in securing your information within minutes. One of my favorite features is the secure VPN, so not only am I safe whilst browsing the internet, but it allows me to keep up to date on a variety of international streaming platforms. If this is something you're interested in, head on over to dashlane.com/turtletale for Dashlane free on your first device, then get 10% off your premium subscription by using the promo code TURTLETALE at checkout, and thanks to Dashlane for sponsoring today's video. In early June, the Forthos Dungeon poll was released. Included in this poll were questions regarding the Underground Pass, and making the old piece of content easier for those that have completed the quest. Questions such as, after completing the Underground Pass, should players be able to bypass it, or should there be a shortcut to bypass the Agility Maze? These changes even stretched into Morning's End Part 2, with reducing the amount of items needed for the Death Talisman from 50 to just 12. Whilst most of the Forthos questions passed with flying colours, the questions regarding the Underground Pass didn't meet the 75% threshold, and therefore shouldn't have passed, right? Well, on the release day of Song of the Elves, seeing as I had no accounts with the requirements to complete the new quest, I decided to do some theory crafting and digging around to see what new features had been added with the update. The first major change I noticed, and posted to the subreddit on the day of, was that the agility obstacles within the Underground Pass had become next to impossible to fail. Whilst I captured the footage of this, I later happened to discover that all of the traps within Turaman had become substantially easier, and next to impossible to fail. This also includes the tripwire trap, which had notoriously been a pain in the butt for most players, seeing at even level 99 agility, there was only a 60% success rate, but at level 56 I was passing it almost every single time. These changes were reverted within a week of the release, but there's no telling how long they would have remained if players had not realised. Although I cannot find the quote now, I do recall someone stating that the changes to the Underground Pass were implemented, assuming that the polled questions back in June would pass. However, when they failed, the changes to the Underground Pass were not reverted and were left in the update patch. Some of the other changes included a new pipe that, although it cannot be accessed, was presumably introduced to bypass the spike maze. The bubbles within the thieving shortcut were removed and still have not been re-added, so that players can run straight through from end to end. And instead of speaking to Koftik at the drawbridge, there is now a pile of gear, and you can select how much cloth that you want to pick up for fire arrows. Now, while most of these changes I see as quality of life improvements and actually bringing the old content up to par with the new content, some of the changes were polled against and implemented anyway, so let me know what you guys think about that. In addition to these changes, the Underground Pass did receive other facelifts, with new animations for crawling through the agility pipe, which halves the amount of time it takes to crawl through, and the Well of Voyage now has a fancy new animation. All of the traps within the pass could no longer be bypassed as they previously could be. Before the update, you were able to stand a single tile before and sprint to the other side without triggering the trap, whereas now they've all been fixed and are impossible to bypass. During the quest, there's many spots where players can collect extra food to save having to travel back through the pass multiple times. After completing the quest, you can now talk to Koftik within the throne room to receive a free food that has now been added, presumably to make the quest easier. Cayman the Dwarf also used to give the player free food, but now he charges a steep price of 75 coins. All of these updates are just minor quality of life changes, but perhaps the biggest change introduced with this update is that the Underground Pass is now instanced to players that have completed the quest. Therefore, random events can no longer be triggered within the pass, and all of the mobs that were necessary for the quest to be completed have been removed. After completing the quest, the 3 paladins, the 3 demons, the Disciples of Iban, Kalrag the Spider, the Solus, and Iban himself have all been removed. What actually makes this instance unique is that even after completing the quest, you can still see players that are in the middle of completing the underground pass and can even watch them attack mobs that are non-existent for you. It's a bit odd considering that they cleaned this up, but then there are still things that exist, like the double unicorn rooms right next to each other. I just feel like it was a very half-assed job. My favourite part though is that the witch no longer lives within the underground pass, and her cat has disappeared too. You know, she built her house down there and she moved in, and she's just gone. She left everything there. You can access the house as normal, you can research the chest, you can do all that, but it's just odd changes like that that make me wonder why they even happened in the first place. Despite all of these other changes, the best change to be implemented by far was the addition, or should I say re-addition, of the anvil within the Dwarven camp. As it was pointed out by Reddit user Kotiak Krabati, back in RS2 there were in fact anvils within the underground pass dwarf camp that were later removed when the area was redesigned. In regards to the older versions of RuneScape 2, although this isn't a change made in Song of the Elves, I've always wondered what the rocks within the Fail room were for underneath the swamp bog at the very beginning. Apparently, back in RuneScape Classic, there were rocks that you could mine within the underground pass, similar to temple trekking where you use the long stick to test where it's safe to walk. I've tried using these rocks to do the same thing inside the underground pass, although they don't appear to work in current day. My guess is they're just a little Easter egg that refer back to the old days. One final Easter egg I've been sitting on for quite some time and haven't told you guys about is that the green pixel on the construction icon isn't alone. It's actually got a family living tucked away in the underground pass, and if you sit at the right angle, you can actually see it poking through. Just so that you guys know, he's not a lone pixel anymore, he actually has a family. Now continuing on with changes made in Song of the Elves, the rest of Turanman has seen some minor alterations too. The crystal pendant presented to the player during Regicide has now been recolored to blue in line with the other crystals, instead of looking like the gnome amulet as it used to. The Elven scout that teaches the player to traverse the dense forest has now been removed post-Regicide. Yorworth warriors have now been introduced to the Yorworth camp in replacement of the generic elf warriors that you could see in both Lita and in the Yorworth camp. My only guess as to why the drop tables were altered was to give players more incentive to kill elves within the camp for their slayer tasks, as it's far more inconvenient than killing elves in Lita, but even then, at the end of the day, the loot difference and the price difference really isn't that worth it. One of the final changes within Turanman, which quite honestly has me a bit stumped as to how or why it even changed, is that river fishing spots are seemingly infinite now. The resource areas can be depleted and they move to the next location. However, post-update, the river fishing spots within Turanman no longer do this and they just remain stagnant. It's exceptionally convenient for my account and for fishing and for cooking, but I just don't understand what could have possibly altered the fishing spots and why it changed. Perhaps the biggest change within Turanman though, is the addition of the 2 runite rocks within the Isifdar mine. According to the wiki, this poll question didn't pass. It didn't meet the 75% minimum. However, the rocks were introduced anyway. Since the update, I've seen multiple players hopping worlds and even bots camping these rocks, as the requirements to access them are essentially nothing, with the bare minimum of Regicide, and after the completion of Roving Elves, the bank is exceptionally close by. The wiki could be wrong and maybe the question did pass, but if it was correct and players didn't vote to have the rocks introduced, why were they implemented anyway? I would say now it is one of the best spots in the game to mine runite ore. With 2 rocks, easily hopping worlds to consistently mine them, it's equivalent to the level 46 wilderness, and the requirements to get here are a couple of hours of game time max. So if the OSRS team is willing to implement something so big and to go against the players' wishes, why are PvP updates so hard to push into the game and to implement? Anyways, the final undocumented change, which in my opinion should have been in the game when the quest was first released, is after the completion of Morning's End Part 2, the shadows within the Temple of Light are no longer hostile. Which is rightfully so. After you finish the quest, you reactivate the temple's defenses, and therefore the shadows should be tamed or killed off entirely. It opens up a new agility training method for my locked Iron Man account, which is 10 times faster than my current one. So I'm over the moon about the change, but it should have been implemented when the quest was first released. It's just another one of those oversights, and at the end of the day I believe it is a very old and very outdated quest. So all in all, majority of these changes are very minor in comparison to the rest of the game and a lot of the problems the community in the game are facing at the moment, such as third-party clients. These minor updates though are just one of those things that seem to be very overlooked, from the changing of obstacle difficulties to the implementation of something that clearly failed the polling process. After going to so much effort to produce such a fantastic quest and new piece of content for the game, why change and alter the older content without so much as a footnote in the dev blogs? A little bit of transparency goes a long way, and I think we need it now more than ever. So if you guys notice anything more changing without poles passing, or any little bits and pieces in the game, let me know, because it's something I'm genuinely curious about, and I'd love to investigate it further. To all of you attending RuneFest this year, safe travels and have a wonderful time. I regrettably could not make it this year, but fingers crossed I might be able to meet many of you next year. I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.